Delighted to welcome John Norton, Annapolis Harbor Boat. I was just saying to him that it's my favourite town, Annapolis. Is it a town or is it a city? It's not a city, is it?
City.
It's a city. Okay, it's a very small city. So it's a lovely place.
It is. Population-wise, it's small.
Yeah, it's small. So you're very welcome. And over to you.
Cool. All right. So I know a bunch of familiar faces in here. So I think most of you know me, but I'm John with Annapolis Harbor Boat Yard. Been doing this Seakeeper gig, and Randy called me and stopped us and asked us to do a little presentation between some of the newer technologies. So Seakeeper Ride is what we're here to talk about. Answer any questions and don't hesitate, grab me. Just so a little history. Seakeeper started in 2008 with the first product launch. First OEM, believe it or not, was Azimuth, shipping all the way back over to Italy. Everything produced here in the US. Done literally, I think 35 or 40,000 aftermarket installs now, OEMs. I can't even count anymore. Other people can tell us. We got into the smaller units, the DC units, in 2015 first. Hard to believe it's that long. SK2, which is a second physically smallest unit, was 2018, and then 2020 with the SK1 product launch right before COVID at Miami Boat Show. We've been a dealer since 2016, and I've serviced over 450 individual units, done installs, probably 65 or 70. So we've got a lot of experience in the background of these. A couple of things you guys will notice. First logo here, if any surveyor sees that first logo, wrong. They're completely unsupported. The failures we're seeing are all electrical related. So the old ECMs and GCMs are dying. It's part of the computer programs from back then. They're just not, there's nothing we can do about them. So if you see that old logo, specifically with that old round display, it's about a 3-inch display. As a surveyor, look for it first. I can't tell you any codes. I can't tell you how to use it. Nobody can tell you. We have to go back through the archives to find the manuals on it. That photo I had to ask 15 people for to try and find.
What years were they in
that logo? So 2008 on up to, I think it changed in 14, 15.
Okay.
So if you see anything older than that,
Is it a model number we should look for? You know,
any of the M series.
M series.
So you're going to see M8, M7000, M8000, M26000. Those are all the first of the series. And those are what they call legacy units and unsupported. I can get some parts.
2012 to
2008 to about 2014 or 15. So everybody in here know how they work? Besides Chris? No?
I don't know.
All right. So it's centrifugal force, right? We all played with a gyro as a kid. Imagine that with a flywheel. It's the smallest flywheel is 180 pounds, spinning about 9,000 RPM, give or take a little, depending upon the unit. SK9's 6,000 RPM. SK1's 9,750. The big units are only about 4,000 RPM, but spins that quick because it's in a vacuum, a helium-filled vacuum. So as that vacuum goes away, speed decreases. We'll get into that in a couple minutes. But that flywheel spins, there's a hydraulic brake ram assembly, and that assembly limits how far the sphere can precess. That's the rocking forward and back. So you'll see in a video here in a couple seconds. It's got incredibly fast processors. The IMU's in there, which is the inertia measurement unit. That's what triggers it. Little tiny black box. You'd never be able to find it if you were looking for it. That's on all the SK models. Anything literal, the SK9, SK1, SK2. That whole unit's only 3 inches by 2.5 inches. But then you've got a cooling system. It's a glycol internal with a heat exchanger. So as a surveyor, you're going to be looking for wall water pumps, and you're going to be looking for the glycol. I can show you how to trigger some of that here in a couple minutes. So question, does it work? This will kind of give you a really good idea this video. We stole it off our social media. You can see the unit precessing back and forth in there. This is 2 to 3 foot Chesapeake snot at the mouth of the Severn. And you'll see here as I engage this, just watch the boat lock in. It just goes to 0. We go from 12 to 15 degrees of roll to 2 to 3. So that boat was an 87% roll reduction. We've exceeded 94% on some of the installs we've done. I've literally got hundreds of videos. We only picked one that we had fun stuff with to annoy them. That was a Sportsman 35. They're standard, not standard, optional in sportsman boats from 26 through 35. And then the Phenoms come with them, I believe, standard. Manufacturers, a lot of OEMs have units on them. Most of the smaller boats you're going to see a DC powered. On the smaller sub 35 foot boats, all DC powered. Above that are going to be AC powered. So if you see a SK5 or above, let me rephrase that now. SK4.5 or above, they're all AC powered. SK4 and below are all DC powered. You look confused.
So you've got a generator running while?
Most of the power boats in the larger ranges, 35, 40 foot, you're going to be running a generator anyway. So relatively low current consumption, 15 to 20 amps, size up, and works really well. So one of the big things that we see, maintenance. This is our maintenance schedule. No screenshots, Chris. So as we see all of this stuff, right? Typical boat owners over the years, you guys have all seen this. You and I've been privy to a few of these boats where people forget to do the maintenance. Oops. Right. So cooling system, just like an engine heat exchanger, cooling system needs to be flushed and descaled. Hydraulic cylinders, bushings, mounting bolts, all of the typical mechanical failure parts. On top of that, we're going to go back through the system and make sure that there's no goofy codes. But the biggest one, cooling systems and brake systems, those are our biggest failure points. And I think that's true on anything, right? It's a mechanical seal, it's a hydraulic system. Hydraulic system is pressurized anywhere between 250 PSI and 350 PSI. It's a lot of pressure. If that single lip seal goes bad, fluid starts shooting out. And then show you. So things.
Just real quick question, looking at that maintenance list,
Uh-huh.
you know, you're at 1,000-hour service for a lot of those things.
Or angle, whichever comes first.
Okay.
And we do that for a reason, right? So hydraulic seals, perfect example of why. Hydraulic seals, if you're not looking at those, or the worst part is, hey, I never use it. Things only got 3 hours. You just killed it. That seal's not lubricated, right? Mechanical seals, specifically hydraulic, if they're not moving, it's not putting fluid back across that lip seal, and it'll fail. It'll dry out, it'll crack, it'll start spewing fluid. I've got a single photo in here of a fluid issue, but we've seen them where we go to pressurize the unit and have hydraulic fluid shooting out of things because of lack of maintenance. Hoses, there are hydraulic hoses. So standard steel, not stainless steel, they become rust buckets, rust balls, breaking those seals, lots of not fun. So things for you guys to look at. So these are foundational issues. You can see these are mounting points. I can't tell you the manufacturer because I've been cursed at by both the factory and this builder. But this was one of the worst cases I've seen. There was a near complete catastrophic failure, and this unit was within 4 inches of the primary electrical outlet. If that had come loose, I can only tell you how bad it would be. Now, Seakeeper as a factory doesn't do the installs. They only make recommendations, just like other manufacturers. Pick your poison, Smart Gyro, Quick, Magnetic. They can only make recommendations as to how the units are supposed to be installed. It's up to the manufacturer to do that. I will tell you in the confidence of this room, those that are online, that this manufacturer, when we ground through this, found that their lamination structure was insufficient that their mounting structure was insufficient. And let's say that I got a phone call from legal from Seakeeper to, and I quote, shut the hell up. Because I saw 4 boats with the same failure. And so but it is what it is. I can't do anything about that. That's between the builder and the factory. All we can do is say, hey, customer, you got a problem here. Here's how we're gonna fix this. But that's a major, major, major foundational problem.
I was back on the manufacturer of the boat.
You want to go to court over it and spend your $150,000, or you want to spend the 45 to 50 to fix it right?
Yeah, but as a surveyor, we see that we're gonna write it up.
You do it.
Right. We're gonna say,
100%.
It's unsecure, it has movement. To have a professional technician, fiberglass technician, determine the cost.
That's the only thing you can do, but it shouldn't just be a fiberglass technician. It should be somebody that's familiar with that particular installation, because if you just say have a fiberglass guy do it, all they're gonna do is pull the bolts, they're gonna break things, they don't know how to lift it. There's a whole lifting procedure with these units. If you don't do it right, when I say you'll break the sphere, we'll turn it into a 750-pound grid in about 4 minutes. It can turn real over.
And that's, I guess that was my question. What happens, because I'm not familiar with these, is if it broke loose and you said it was catastrophic, what happens? Like, just,
So for Seakeeper, you're gonna get an instantaneous alarm. The unit's gonna start to spool down and shut itself down. But you know, in this unit, this is an SK6, I'm sorry, an SK5 in this boat at 780 pounds. It can be loose in the middle.
so it's spinning, so I mean, I guess I was
It's
getting
spinning,
at,
but the unit
it's safety for people's safety. That's
You're gonna have a
it
750.
can hurt
pound
people. It's
piece.
not like you say catastrophic, it's like
Well, if it's
messing people up,
4
yeah.
inches away from the electrical panel in a heavy seaway, it's not gonna break loose when it's calm. I
right.
can tell you that now.
It
Right.
takes an hour and a half to shut down.
Keep going.
Yeah.
SK6 is 6.5 hours. Stop.
Six-
You mean it'll take an hour and a half for it to stop one,
Six-
Six
six-
hours.
to stop.
Stop
Yeah.
spinning.
So
That doesn't, the unit itself will lock the brake system, so it can no longer precess forehand. Right, that brake system is hydraulic, it has to have the pressure for it to be able to unlock the solenoids that are inside the unit. We didn't bring a unit because honestly, I'm too lazy to drag that thing around. It's 750
Here's
pounds.
the thing,
Anybody
it's
have-
like a pinball.
it looks like how large is it? I thought. So it's about that long, but it's really,
24 inches in diameter.
yeah, but 750 pounds, yeah.
It's a pinball in a boat.
Back to the slide with the flywheel, go back.
That's the opposite.
That's the flywheel.
That's what spins.
That is a solid steel flywheel. So
It's
now
spin.
take that in a vacuum, once that vacuum's broken, it's gonna spin for as long as it takes for that thing to stop. In a super high precision bearing.
Under 10,000 RPM.
Yeah, and then that's what I was
With
getting- I can
zero air
imagine,
friction,
like,
because it's in a vacuum.
that was my question, be like, the damage that something like that could do on the
I don't
run.
think about it.
Yeah,
I've not
that's
seen
what,
it. Well, let me read it. I have seen. I saw it once. Unit picked up, turned 30 degrees inside of its cradle and sat back down. Idiot captain ran the boat at 50 knots over 6-foot seas. And the OEM forgot to put bolts in.
so that's
So
why
it
the
came up,
reason.
turned, slammed back down. And
That's
stuck.
the bolts.
Got the- They put the bolts in, got to put the nuts on.
That's fun, real time.
Probably the cell phone.
Well, who knows?
Somebody else.
So 2 things we're gonna see for brake pressure failures. One, you're gonna see this code. I don't know if anybody can see this or not. It says brake pressure 1 low. You may get 1, 2, code 12, code 13, code 14. Those are all Seakeeper displays codes for brake pressure failures. With any luck, you see that before anything else. See that drop of oil?
Yep. Hydraulic seal.
That seal's bad. We can tell you, as surveyors, you go in the unit, reach under on the brake side, you'll see it. Wipe your finger under there, come back with oil. So you need to get the service. Why? Go back to that alarm pad. If you hit the button on the right, shows a little bell, it's gonna tell me all the codes. Take it as a surveyor, take photos of those. Sometimes there's gonna be 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 pages of those. But those tell us what the problem is. Here's a really good one that we found. What do you guys see there?
Movement.
Something's
Steel,
rare,
metal.
something's.
So another issue. OEM didn't tighten the bolts all the way. So this is a manufacturer that puts a through bolt in. Factory recommends, and I don't know if Smart Driver does the same thing. You guys are recommending that down into a plate of some sort with a certain amount of torque. Through bolting is acceptable in certain situations as long as the bottom side's accessible and serviceable.
Yeah.
In this case, I can tell you that it was neither of those. Down in a hole, can't get a wrench all the way back. It's physically impossible to do that. Again, I can't tell you all the manufacturers on these. Sorry, you'll see them. But if you see those signs of dust, specifically at the mounting points, that's a massive problem. When we serviced this boat, Little John was with me. First codes we saw, codes 37, which is an excessive movement in the unit. The unit's moving, but so is the base, right? We see that base moving. If the unit's moving on top of that, we have a problem.
So that's bolt thread dust, the bolt threads are wearing off.
Actually, in that case, it was the foundation of the Seakeeper. So the mount of the Seakeeper, the base of the Seakeeper itself, that bolt is grade 8 steel. This is aluminum. So it's the foundation of these beautiful
Moving around and.
Yeah.
So it was moving around and
A
I'm
lot.
wearing down. Okay.
a whole lot. So what we did is we went and disabled the unit until they had that properly addressed. They didn't want to bring the boat to us because it was in Occoquan.
Yeah.
It was in Occoquan. So little run all the way around. I can't do something like that offsite. You know, that's a 600-pound, 700-pound unit in a hole. And we need all kinds of crazy tooling to be able to get that. Yeah.
And a question, there's a little decal there for a grounding wire that's not there.
Yep. No bonding system on the boat. A lot of center consoles are gonna have that. The factory is recommending us to tie it back to the negative bus on the DC side. I'm hesitant on that and a lot of its issues because then we can create a ground loop issue.
To make it worse.
Exactly. Yeah. So on our end, when we don't have a bonding system at all, we do not connect it. Factory has argued with us a little bit, but without E12, don't tell me what to do. They read it and they get confused. So we leave it disconnected. Some of the manufacturers, I don't know. But so here's a couple signs of real quick lack of maintenance. You guys may or may not be able to see this in some of the boats that you deal with, but if you happen to take a cover off for whatever reason, and I'm not suggesting you do that as a surveyor, generalized surveyor, but if you start to see mold in there, I can darn near guarantee you that that unit has not been serviced. And that's two of the units. Those are both DC units. The unit on the right, that scoring on the top is impact from the cover, right? When you see the cover that says SK on the top, do not lean on that. That is the finished gauge steel you will see in your life. It's maybe a 32nd of an inch thick. You lean on it, it bends, it collides with it. Now, what you may or may not be able to see is right here, that's a vacuum fitting. Okay, right here is a cooling hose, and the wire for the vacuum sensor. If that cover hits any of those, trash. Real simple. So when we see that, we know that the unit hasn't been serviced properly, or the unit's owners tried to go in and do some of their own service, or leaned on the unit.
In this case, is the cover movement or the precession movement creating that?
It's the precession of the
Gotcha.
unit itself. The cover was in place, but somebody bent the cover.
Gotcha.
So what we do, if you see that cover bent, write it up and just say, we highly recommend you guys get this addressed. All I'm gonna do is pop that cover off and literally on my knee go, straighten it out, put it right back in. There are a couple companies, we make a few of them that do some diamond plate aluminum on top. So if it's in an area where it has to be stepped on, stood on, anything like that, 3/16 diamond plate, that'll hold it anybody.
I'm making an assumption, is there a label saying do not stand or is
Not
something?
in steps.
I'm just asking because if
There isn't,
it's a flat surface, they're gonna lay something on it.
yeah.
They're gonna kneel on it, whatever. I'm just figuring if there's something. to
We've
say.
done some of them, the factory doesn't do it,
Okay.
but it's in the manual. It says do not stand, do not sit, do not put heavy objects. When we can sticker a boat to death, who's gonna pay attention to it?
I was just figuring.
We see it all the time in generators.
You see it all the time in your car, flip the sun visor down. How many of you have read the backside of your sun visor? Right, it's got 15 things on the back of mine. So these are the different displays. You can see, there's one more that's not here. This is the original display. Like I said, if you see this, so there's a 4 button and then a 3-inch circle. Don't even call me on it. I can't tell you how to work it. Honest to God, I've seen 2. That's it. The older displays are the 5 button. And then there's another 5 button that is not backlit. I oddly don't have a photo of that one. But this one appears the same. It's actually the same boat. That pin code, you're gonna see all of this info is what we want to see. This information page that's right here. This tells me what model it is, how, what the serial number is, how many run hours and how many sea hours. You can't get into this to unlock it, to operate anything, etc. For a reason. We don't want anybody in there. That page can only be accessed when the unit is stopped. Same thing. Here. There is a, oh, here. So you've got the same sorts of displays in here with the 6-inch display. These are going to be our codes. You see this bar on the side? That tells you there's 6 or 7 pages of faults in here.
The one on the left there, you said you cannot access that unless it's stopped.
If you put the code in,
Oh, the code. Okay.
you can't do anything.
But we can read all that while it's running.
Absolutely. It'll tell you that. It'll, on these, it won't tell you RPM. On these units, it'll actually tell you the RPM. So this one was a little over 10,000 RPM. So spooling up pretty quick. Oh, actually go back. So these codes, and you just went too far.
Yeah, no.
These codes, these are the ones we want you to take photos of. You're gonna see like here, brake pressure low. That's a fault that's gonna shut the unit down. You will not be able to operate it if you see that brake pressure low fault. It will not spool up. And AC mains low, an IMU fault, or a DC input voltage low, you may or may not be able to operate the unit. The IMU fault, some of them, if you can't clear it, and it's got literally a checkbox or an X, if that IMU fault won't let you clear it, there's a failure in that inertia measurement unit, and we have to replace it. So if you constantly see that, there's nothing you can do. You can't get it up and running.
What's the minimum voltage? 10.3?
Depends. It's 11.6.
11.6 now?
11.6 or 21-ish, depending upon the unit. So even the bigger AC units are going to require 240 and 24. So that's shipping. That's the FK9s and above. I don't know how many of you guys are doing big boats, and Steve, you've done a few.
But you said 11.2 will drop the DC voltage alarm.
100%. And then there's also a DC high current alarm. The high current alarm will not allow you to. So there's a high current side and a low current side. On the DC side, the low current side is only 5 to 10 amps. The high current side is up to 120 amps. So significantly. If the high current alarm is on, you will not be able to spool the unit up. It won't work on anyone.
Does Seakeeper call for a dedicated battery or do people tie in the house?
Yep. The factory requires a certain amount of current. They don't tell us how we get that. When we do an install, and I think this is the recommended way, is that we do a completely separate bank with high current breakers, low current breakers, independent battery switches, etc. My installs are a little more expensive than other people, but I don't want to see you again.
Yeah.
So, but the factory, they just say this is what we have to do because in some instances there's not enough room. You know, if you guys are at the boat shows, you'll see our Seacraft. We got an old 23 Seacraft that we take to boat shows. We got a single battery in there. We run completely independent off of the remainder of the boat. It's got its own battery charger leg. It's got its own ACR, completely separate. That's how we do the setups in our shop. Other shops don't do the same.
Right.
Some manufacturers don't do the same. So I can tell you offhand, Bertram is tied into the house bank. Scout's tied into the house bank, and Sportsman's tied into the house bank. Those are the ones right off the top of my head I've seen in the last month. Let's get balance these. So, sure.
We're looking about a Scout 29, something like that. The member this house is living room, library. How long do you have to wait? When does the boat have to wait?
10 minutes. So when you shut the unit down, the raw water pump on any of the DC powered units is going to run for 10 minutes. Then it's going to automate. The timer's a little funky. They tell us 10 minutes. Mine's only 5, 8, something like that. And then you can yank. As soon as that pump shuts down, you can pull it. Now the factory tells us we can go ahead and pull it because the glycol side should be okay. In the Chesapeake, with our warmer waters, I would not recommend that. Because summertime, we're going to get 80, 90, some of the back creeks, 92, 93 degrees. That unit's going to be at 120 degrees. It's going to really want to cool down. We don't recommend shutting it down before that raw water pump shuts down. Once that raw water pump shuts down, pull it. AC powered units, timer's about the same, but it really depends on the age of the unit and which pump it's got. Early models used an AC powered pump, the later models use a DC powered pump up to the SK9. The new 10.5 will be a DC powered pump. That's not a 10 or 10.5, whatever they're calling it this month. That will be a DC powered pump, so that's just 10 minutes. Above that are all AC powered pumps, including the 35 and 40 on those big units. If you've seen those pumps make special notation of in a survey, those pumps are $3,500 to $4,000. They're very freaking expensive. And they're nice. We haven't had too many failures for them. Those are the factory recommended ones. There are manufacturers out there. Electricity's making a new Silver Bullet series pump. That's awesome. It's a run dry pump. So if you haul a boat when it's still running, it's a non-issue. But the German pumps that they're putting in those big units, man, they're pricey.
So it's a non-issue for the pump, but it's all about not starting the unit cooling
So
before you haul out, right?
not necessarily. The answer is yes and no. Is it still a heat exchanger system? So the glycol can still run through the system and will still help cool it.
Okay.
The key is that the cooling system isn't just for the bearings. It's actually for the ECU. That ECU is processing so freaking fast that it can overheat. Once that overheats, you get in the big one. $3,500 to start for just the components. Next week, we're expecting those to be closer to $5,000 or $3,500. They're all overseas.
Oh,
Are there what? I'm sorry?
Zincs?
In some of the units, yes. So in the 3, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 4.5, no. All of the other units, yes. So 5 and up, there are zincs. All of the AC units there are, except the brand new units. I have to say that with some sort of caveat because the new units, that what we found is that the zincs are actually clogging the heat exchanger and causing more problems because owners aren't paying attention. So the zincs will break down just like the heat exchanger in any raw water cooled engine. They'll clog the water passages and cause the heat exchanger.
It won't alter.
On the water passages in the meantime, and they cause a problem. And once they clog those passages, they don't dissolve because they're not making contact.
Just to go back to your question about, you were answering, Randy, about the cooling time for shutdown on the DC pump. Is it still a 10-minute wait period on AC power pumps?
Now, it depends on the software version in the unit, and I can't even tell you which ones are and which ones aren't. But your safe bet, you're doing a survey, shut it down 3 minutes before that call out, and you're fine.
And it'll shut down itself. If you turn it off after the 10-minute timer, it'll shut itself. The pump, it'll shut itself off. So basically just shut it down and let it wait until it's done and.
A lot of those you can see above water line, some of them can't.
And what about the other way? You put the boat in the water, how fast does it spin up now?
Depends on how fast it was spooled up before. Some of the units, like the 30 minutes to full spool up. Okay. 35 or 40, hour and 20, really. But if you had it running prior, you put it back in the water and spool it up again, your spool up time is cut in half. Not, depends on how.
It's usually what I try to do. I get it spooled up beforehand, let it run, and see if there's any errors on the cooling pump, let it come up to temperature, shut it down, hold the boat back in and out to our trial running. But technicians able to take an audio recording with their phone of the unit at full spool running and send that to Seakeeper for analysis on bearing operation, et cetera. Is that something that is available?
Biggest one is there are only 4 or 5 engineers that can do that. And if 4,000 surveyors around the world, all you need to do is go to the whale survey. You've never heard it. I don't know how many of you ever heard it. It's going bad. I have. I don't know where that video is, but I have one.
So it'll be pretty obvious.
Holy crap, it'll be obvious.
Okay.
There is an oddity, and you guys need to know this. There is an oddity where we call it page rattle. So anybody in here familiar with acoustics and harmonics? Right. So with harmonics, every physical component can create a slightly different cycle, hertz, right? Noise range with operational failures or any operational limits. Sometimes those components, when they're assembled, make some really weird harmonics between A and B. You will hear, as you spool it up or spool it down, a really weird hum. Okay? And I say that because I mean literally a hum, not a grind.
At a specific RPM
At a
range.
specific RPM. If it's only in a 200 to 300 RPM range, don't worry about it. Ignore it. It's across the whole range and it sounds like a humpback whale underwater. And I mean this sincerely. Then write it up. Because when you hear that, second you hear it, you will know. You'll go, I remember that. Humpback whale. Humpback whale. It's going to kind of moan and groan just like that. You recognize.
Shut down. Yeah.
Say, look, highly recommend you contact either local. You guys are local, call me. We do this all. I've done a few surveys, pre-purchase surveys for the great ponds and we're happy. Sorry.
You mentioned earlier that the units have a shutdown inside, sensing abnormal movement in the unit themselves. Some of these larger units have flexible mounts. So there is inherent movement, a pretty significant amount that's naturally on those mounts. Is that disabled entirely on those units or just the tolerance set higher?
It's set in a different format. And that's why those components are very specific for the units. So that IMU is for that. And it's within tolerance. But those flexible mounts aren't as flexible as you think they are. We get them back out when we have to. I was actually just down at training at the end of February. And they teach you how to deal with a pulling bubble pump. Get out of the way. For damn. Start like, what the hell are you doing? I don't have time for that in the field. This is how we really do it.
Is that only on the 35s?
26, 35, and 40. Only on the big units. And they're a nightmare. You're gonna see them, they're bolted in, deep bolts. And you're now talking at that point, a unit that's 3,000, 4,000, 4,200 pounds. So they're substantial.
Big rusted bolts usually too.
Yeah. We hope not.
Yeah.
But usually they're on sport fish. We were pretty lucky a couple years ago, and did a swap on a unit on 35 for a high profile individual with 300 people standing and watching us. We did it in 6 hours, start to finish. 3 of us. And it was a nightmare. It's doable, it's just not fun. And those rusty bullets, get your coil out and soak the living hell out of it before you get started.
Yeah.
Sir.
Install and steel boat.
Mhm.
And the interaction between the unit and the hull.
So we have to put an isolation plate in between, specifically utilizing G10 to isolate it, because of wear characteristics and
Right.
electrical interference. G10 is a perfect isolator, and they're specifically designed for those applications. They come from the factory. They're 16th or 3/32 of an inch, and we do install a lot, even on some of the fiberglass boats.
What is the passion?
Still using steel. Oddly, I can pull up the other slides. The units are the factory recommendations for Seakeeper for units up to the 9 is into a 1-inch T6061 aluminum bar, in specific widths and lengths as an absolute minimum. And it depends on the unit, so I won't get into all the technical side of that. But then it's drilled and tapped, installed with a helicoil and a steel helicoil, and then Loctite in, and then the bolts are then now installed with nickel-based anti-seize versus Loctite. And we're using wedge lock lockers. So
What's the Loctite energy?
So the helicoil is put in with Loctite so it can't back out, because we basically want that helicoil to be permanently embedded into that aluminum bar.
Who's gonna call Loctite?
And then the unit bolts, the mounting bolts are put in with the aces. Any other questions on gyro?
Sorry.
It's no, man. I'm literally here to answer all your questions.
Then a couple of large vessel installations, 2 gyros, fore and aft of each other. One installation, 2 gyros, 4 ships side by side. The only thing I could find in the literature was that in this installation, it was center of midships on the vessel, which was against the proper installation instructions from what I could find in that. Not true. Okay, good. Anything to do, any issue with mounting them like whole ships?
Not at all. Units interact independently. Does not matter where they are in the boat. In the planning hall, we want to be able to have.
This wasn't.
In some instances, we can put them in the half 2/3 of the boat. It all depends. If you think of that fulcrum arm, you don't want that unit mounted farther forward because it's just going to destroy the bearings. And in the bigger units, the isolation bushings, I think you guys are probably the same way with smart gyro and everything else. Anything in that half. Or just think about those precision bearings. You're going to take your lifespan of those, cut them by 2/3. Right, so you're going from 7,000 hours to 2,500. That's a big shift and a big investment. So no, it really doesn't matter. We did an install on a Nordic Tug 32. Physically, the only place to do it, all the way aft, all the way starboard side. But a monster battery tank on the port side to offset it. It's the only thing we have to do.
Well, this boat that you were on that had them fore and aft, were they both in the aft 2/3 of the boat?
Large sport fish, both in the aft, and then the other one, they were both just forward of the center of the midships, on, outboard on both sides, and also on a large planing, sport fish.
They're that far forward?
There was,
Probably go both.
it's, 78.
So they're probably using 2 9s.
Yeah.
So you'll see in a lot of custom sport fish, multiples of 6s, multiples of 9s, a 6, a 9, 45-foot sport fish cars. 6 and a 3, so an AC unit and a DC unit. We want to talk about complete confusion for somebody, going, what the hell is going on here? They work completely independently. They are not tied electrically together at all. They are completely independent. ICUs, processors, the whole nine yards.
It's some pretty good structural issues on that particular build with my torch system. We were trying to determine, was it because of the installation or was it because of the way that the installer put them in or the situation?
And we've seen some of that, you know, in some of the 78 foot Sportfish, the custom builds, specifically Floridian builds, you'll see 3 units right in the build between the 2 motors, boom, boom, boom. Sometimes 4, because they can't fit a large unit in, so they're utilizing the space that they've got available.
It's a common practice with these sports fish captains, and I just want your opinion or suggestion on it. When they're operating the vessel at high speed on a plane, charging 30 knots, the units are typically turned off or centered or locked. And then when slowing down, trolling slower speed and engaged, is that a good practice for the unit?
Okay, so you've asked my opinion, be careful here. Using it. Guys will up use it. If it's locked, it's no longer, and it's at full speed, it's no longer able to compensate for anything.
Yeah.
Why have you paid $150,000 freaking dollars to have it sit there and build? All these, we hear that question. Why won't it open? I probably had that 200 times this year. Fair?
So what's the thought process in reverse? Why would you lock it? Why wouldn't you? Why would a captain say, let's lock it, run out, we power down?
Because Billy down the dock said that was a good thing and it lasted 3 hours longer.
They think it's countering the immense force of the vessel launching and jumping off
So
waves.
you're saying saving wear and tear on.
That's what they think.
You
But
know,
I can tell you now, it's not working.
big planing hulls is inherently pretty stable anyway, so I can see why they're thinking like, oh, it's fine when we're up and running, but let's turn it on when we slow down and we're doing this.
So the thought process there is, in our opinion, incorrect. Just use it. I don't know what smart gyro around.
Yeah, I mean, it just depending on the boat you use, and they'll tell you either lock it down or use it.
Yeah.
And they may also do it because it affects when, you know, some of these captains are driving these boats like cowboys. And when they're hard over, they're trying to induce a bit of a lean to help carve into a turn and move the boat around, and now they're getting this counter.
They don't need to do that because the unit has, it's a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah, it's inherently knowing you're in a turn, that's gonna reduce the effect.
So remember this, a gyro is only there to. Let me think about the phrasing here correctly. Gyro's only job is to stabilize sudden and instantaneous movements. If it's a consistent movement, so if all of us stand on one side of the boat, it's not going to counteract that. You can't counteract for ballast on one side of the boat or another, at rest or in motion. We'll get to that in a second with ride. It's a whole different ballgame. But constant lift is not going to be counteracted by a gyro at all. It can't do that. It's not what its job was for. It's an instantaneous motion only. So those big sportfish guys, we tell them, run the darn thing, unlock it, because all you're doing is now you've got the bearing centered and it's taking the brunt of the force. If it can precess, it can move, you're going to limit the amount of wear on it. The new units are smarter. They're scaling back because they're trying to sell more ride. And I'm going to be perfectly blunt with that, right? The factory wants to sell this on bigger and bigger boats. It's coming. It's only a matter of time. But on the bigger boats, as the units are getting faster, they are tied into the 2000 network. They're intentionally scaling the operation in effect. It's a hydraulic brake on it. They're locking that. The PBMO knows the portional valve that's inside the unit, is slowing down the movement of the unit so it can't respond as fast because the boat's going to. But the inherent stability of a boat with the home frame is better than that of which a gyro can compensate for in a fast fashion.
Why is the mismatch? You said there was one at like 6,000 and 3,000, 2 different makes and models of gyros in the same boat. Why is there a mismatch?
Physical space. Can't physically put 2 6s in, could put a 6 and a 3. So in a 45 Hatters Express. From the factory, they put in 2 6s. In the aftermarket, you can't physically put it in because of the way they put the motor mounts. They reconfigured the motor mounts in that boat. We went around and around and around in circles.
So you're just basically trying to accumulate enough oomph out of the gyro to move the boat.
They are limited space.
That's it. And
Not a concern,
it does slightly.
some of the pounds is 550.
It depends on the boat, yacht ratings, et cetera. So, we're looking in the aftermarket, we're looking for the build quality of the boat. We need certain structure that's there to be able to tie into. We have had instances where manufacturers don't build the boat with structural glass, they're shooting with a chop mat only. I, again, can't tell names in some of these. But when you, as an installer, if you're doing your homework, you take one look at the boat and something's not right here, pick up the phone, call engineering at said manufacturer, how do you build the boat? Well, we use chop, we use 2 layers of 22 ounce, et cetera, et cetera. I want to hear the second, not the former. Because when we hear the former, my next phone calls to the client, sorry, I'm putting you in. And he's all ready to spend 50 grand. Right? So we have to pay attention to that. And we are looking at build quality, lamination structures, what stringer spacings, what here, what there. When there's a real question, I walk upstairs and go get Viking Systems involved as an AFL architect and say, hey, Lars, what do I do here? And they say, no, we walk away.
Yeah.
But we've only had that question 2 times. Otherwise, boats are built, most of them are built well enough. So the newest, the latest, the greatest, some of you guys have heard some of this stuff, seen it. This is Seakeeper rod. This is our display. Forgive me, we literally broke it on the way here. It's probably over in the trailer. You're gonna hear some grinding. So Seakeeper rod replaces trim caps, right? It is not in dumped in there. It's going to tap off, right off. This is everything that has to do with it. All right, I gotta enable this stupid thing. So it's an auto trim tab system. It's an automatic roll reduction system. It's an improved hole shot. So it's pitch, yaw, and roll all in one. Hard to believe. That's why we brought this. This is our handy dandy little boat show display. This is a live Seakeeper ride system. The only difference is we changed the monster software module. We'll spin this around for you guys and show you this in a whole second. Go ahead, John. So, one more. Here's your perfect example. Left on, boom, right off. Those are real world conditions. Same boat, same area. We've now done this test more times than I care to remember. We did it in a 26-foot sportsman, classic craft line alongside, and 3-4-foot Chesapeake Snopwell and 35 out of Southeast. He was able to run 40. We could pump the feet along with him. Our second test, when we do these, I will take Little John down and see these on the tiny box. Walk around.
Is it accurate to say they will replace the need for a gyro?
Ride is designed 15 knots and above, planing speeds. Think of these buckets, move up and down, okay? You know, only do this one. These will move up to 100 times a second. They will place your current design and drive them. At rest, this will not work. It will shut itself. What fluid would do it? Why have it flapping? 15 minutes. Factory tells us.
So this will, in conjunction with the gyro, make these boats.
Ridiculous.
It's a weird feeling.
It is a very odd, it's a weird. We have a.
With both.
Yeah.
We have a 32 sportsman that is a client of ours that we use as a demo boat. I don't have it in Bay Bridge next to this class, I'm sorry, I'm clear with them. But to take that boat on 4th of July weekend, through the Sever Lake, 35 knots and have it be stable, able to start it out, up and down, you know, all at the same time. It's the strangest freaking experience you will ever have.
You're driving a car on freshly paved asphalt.
That,
Yeah.
for real. So that's cool.
It's, you sit there and you're looking at these waves and you're like, I've taken people out on demos where they're sitting in the bow of the boat and I go to go over a wake and they're grabbing onto whatever they can and they're just like, oh, okay.
It's impressive. From the surveyor's point of view, you guys will not likely see this yet. Like, these are only out for the last 3 years. We have a situation. I did the world's first aftermarket install that was non-factory. Factory based in Maryland. Factory reps wanted to do it. They wanted to figure out how their manuals work, how they could roll it out to dealers, etc. They sent us the papers for the manual. We shredded the manual and sent it back to them for they had steps all out of it. So some of the things you guys are going to look for, how's it mounted? You're not going to be able to tell. Don't look for screws. There aren't any. It's all glued in. This is glued on with the fact really. What's it called? The fact say plexus. All the deck on permanent. The fact yes, permanent. Way to get these off. It's all off. Yeah. You have to get that back plate off. It's the only way you're going to get that off. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. Don't bother. It makes 5,200.
What is it called?
The back plate.
No, I don't know anything about it.
We got plexus.
Plexus?
Yeah. All the deck joints. The Beneteau Group's boats. It's what assembles the boat, stringer fans, system, everything. Everything's glued in.
Plexus.
Plexus.
It's like a cloth on them.
It does not smell like fog. At all. If you want to see it going on, I don't have any. Do I have any assembly instructions on it?
I don't have your password for that. No.
It's not on this. So the system, there's the wedge plate, which is assembled. They're specific for the transom. We have to do specific wedge packs. It has to be within 2 degrees of center. It has to be flush with the bottom. So if you guys see, and you're more than welcome to come up and take a look. But if this pack hangs down any more than it broke and fell down, if it hangs down below the hull, problem. Most of what you're going to see right now is all OEM installs. Very few aftermarket installs. Aftermarket was released 2 years ago.
Yeah,
2 years.
coming up on 2.5 years now.
OEMs 3.5 years ago. And they started in Miami in 2021. Ridiculous technology. That IMU that's in the gyro, they're using an upspeed IMU. That's reading 1,000 times a second. These are direct drive electric motors inside of here. You can physically sort of see them inside the drive. There is no secondary gear. There is no secondary actuator. There is no hydraulic system. Surveyors things to look for: loose bolts, anodes, and loose bolts. Sure that it's intact. Right. Mine's only silicone on this display, so it didn't come off.
No anodes or what?
There is an anode.
Oh.
If they're right behind the bucket, on either side,
They're connected to all bolts, you know, internal framework inside there.
It's connected to the arm on the electric motor.
What about the bolts on the exterior? They're all stainless bolts underwater there. Is there any internal framing to support those, or are we?
You can look for it, you're probably not gonna find it yet, because this is all composite, injection molded in most of the units. Look at that one second. In most of the units. So the new units, the 750 quad, and what will be coming out, you may see aluminum systems.
Are the anodes specific to that? They're,
You are not gonna find them anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there's Seakeeper and
they're super brand.
what about marine growth, any fouling?
Exterior only, inside this bucket, the clearance tolerances are so small, that if you put any anti-fouling in here, it will seize the operation of the group. See, this is cut, right? There's a couple thousands of an inch.
Okay.
That's it, very noisy. That's it.
But the rest is pretty standard anti-fouling bottom paint.
You can, we use prop sweep.
What do you recommend?
So far, prop sweep.
Okay.
Because
It'll stick to the plastic.
it will.
how about barnacles and other?
Oh, yeah, they'll stick to it great.
Yeah. So like, do they,
It's awesome. And they're not funky at all.
yeah, do they
I was
auto,
gonna say, well, now, go ahead.
I was do they auto retract to the point where you're not gonna get growth on that surface where,
They'll auto retract.
Yeah.
Can't tell you about growth.
yeah,
You leave this in the water and don't utilize the boat.
They're gonna grow wherever they can get.
yeah.
And you won't be able to use them.
You've seen it. Some of the issues you will see, beachy areas, sand, small stones can actually wedge in here because you get it not function. You can change that 4 volts, pop that whole bucket off, clean it out, it's pretty simple. 60-inch pounds. Do not use your foot pound torque wrench. It will not end well. I'll tell you that from experience. That's why we recommend that install. It bold outside, underline it, make it in yellow, inch pounds. And don't use a Harbor Freight. Again, things from experience, I've screwed everything up in the world. Let me tell you how bad it is.
I noticed it's installed across the lifting strake on the running surface. Is that an issue or no? Okay.
Not at all. So I'm gonna kick this thing on. You're gonna hear some squeaking and stuff that we didn't really anticipate today. But
Things happen.
yeah, things fall over, things die.
You were going to show us all.
Was your job?
I think that was simultaneous all around.
So this
I understand, like, they think if they're independent, keep
is somebody to do the ball in the yard. Because it's really involved. What's simulating 30 knots, 34 foot speed? Okay. 100 times a second.
So are these similar to the gyros, they're sized?
Yep. So there's sorry, that squeak is gonna drive you nuts. So the 450s, which is this, they're all done in millimeter. 450 millimeter, 525 millimeter, and 600 millimeter, 700.
Yeah, it's just in the 750 quad.
It's depending upon the length of the boat. So the 450 is up to 26 feet, but 525 is 27, 30. 30 to 1 or 35 is the 600. Above that, to 42 feet, it's the 750. Now, 750 is made in 2 different versions. Single 750 millimeter wide blades or quads. So dual per side.
Sounds pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I mean, just I had more to discuss. We just finished 2 flybridge boats that are going into testing right now. 38-foot Regal, triple outboards on it, and a 42-foot post. The factory is very interested to see how both of these perform. But nobody's really done it on boats of that size, that much, with that high of a center of gravity. So.
How old's the pedals?
Yep.
Okay.
1986. Not inexpensive installs, but very interesting for the dynamics of some of these boats. We've all been on some of the older sport fish, pick them, right? Our Jersey sport fish, Jersey's coasts, oceans, Enrique, pick them, right? They all have very nasty snap roll while on plane. And oceans will wallow. They've all been on a 46 ocean or a 50 ocean in any seaway. They run great, but they roll. If you can get used to that roll, you're fine. If you can't get used to that roll, sell a freaking boat and buy something different. Viking does the same thing. You get into the ride system and all that goes away. We think. I can't tell you 100%.
So they pay money to install it, and you're not sure it's gonna work? How does that work?
That happens to be a neighbor of mine, so I pray to freaking God it worked. Oh, I'm never gonna hear it. But we tell them up front. I have zero clue how this is really gonna work. Here's what we think it's gonna do. Here's what we've done with the models. Here's what the hydrodynamic gentlemen that are saying. Here's what the head of engineer is saying.
But he's bought it.
He bought it. It's on. It's in the water. Really looking forward to the sea trials next week. So we can't tell you a whole lot. You know, we don't have the failure points on ride yet. I can't tell you where they are. What I can tell you is the failure points that we've seen and we've heard about.
Pilings.
Don't back it into a piling and it cracks and does this.
You can fall in a trailer.
Don't, if he falls off your trailer, you got a different set of problems. Marine growth, electrical failure, or the biggest one that we've seen so far is software incompatibility issues between the MFD and the unit. You get all kinds of CAN bus issues. So I'm going to spin this thing around real quick. Here's the brains. Ignore this display. This is literally only for our utilization. We've got a CAN bus system for the unit, which is here, and then your NEO 2000 network for the rest of the boat. This is our distribution module, and then this is our software module. This software module gets mounted at the helm. Why? The IMU is based inside that unit. We want it reading what you're feeling. Okay. It's mounted back in the bilge, fulcrum line. You don't get any feedback. So the system has to be able to process it. Okay. Unit is powered off a 25 amp breaker. As surveyors, if you see a 10 or 15 amp, 20 amp, right up, it's not enough. It's going to fail. I just can't believe how fast. Okay. Some of the other things, grounding and bonding systems, we do tie the ride into the DC side. The only time I do that. Okay. The others, these plugs don't unplug them. They're a nightmare. These are air seal plugs that are specific. They're made for Seakeeper. They're basically the equivalent of full waterproof seals on anything in an automotive application. They are very specific. The pin configurations in here are very specific. Work starters don't configure. Okay. Other than that, it's really simple systems. Right. CAN bus system operates off of standard NEO 2000 network cables. This is not under any circumstances to be tied into the NEMA system. So if you see this CAN bus system tied into the NEMA system, if it works, it's a freaking miracle. You get it to work. I proved this the other day. The factory didn't believe me. I said I can take a terminating resistor, dump it into the NEMA 2000 network, and it won't give me a code. They said, no, you can't. I said, really? Watch. Dump it in. And then, whoa, that's not good. So my guess is that they're going to change some of that pin configuration real quick. But it does work. That's the only way it'll work. You don't see a terminating resistor and then don't let it go. You'll see codes in these. They're typically gonna be CAN bus failures, low current issues. That's it.
So the Terminator on that CAN bus is different than the one on the Neva 2000, same.
Identical.
That's fine. They're gonna change that Terminator.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it. But I was able to get it to work. And I was on the phone with the head of, the factory technical support. We've had the privilege of knowing for a long time, and he's like, there's no way that's gonna work. Watch your bench. Watch. Plug it right in. And right, all the codes in the system went away. We don't know how. They can't figure that out. It's completely designed against that.
If it's the same Terminator, same resistance to Terminator, same, it's gonna.
Technically, but it should have a diode in it, only allow information to
Right.
flow in one direction. We don't know yet why that worked. So that is now in software. That was on Thursday. So the engineers are backtracking, trying to figure out what we did, how we made it work. So this is the next. You guys are gonna see this, and you're gonna see it on everything. I'm telling you now. First three manufacturers that came out: Scout, Chris Craft, Sportsman, all 3.5 years ago. Since then, in the last 5 weeks, Parker, Contender, I can't even listen. Regulator, they're all putting ride.
As an option or
It comes standard.
standard out?
For a sportsman, it's their full line.
Yeah.
They are making mold modifications at the OEM to accommodate full line.
What does this approximately cost? And I'm asking, because I'm curious, but I'm also asking as someone who does, vessel valuation assessments,
So
how big a,
ride, the system itself is $4,500 to start for the 450s and goes up. On the 750 quads, you're gonna be looking at about a $28,000 install. Your day will ride.
pretty big range? It's a pretty big range.
And it depends on how much fiberglass work we need to do.
So if we have to go back in and.
Oh, that's installed.
No, ride, so for the 450, the unit itself is $4,500. Just for the unit.
Installed, how much?
Installed, you're going for roughly $9,000 unless we have to do.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is glue it on.
But so you're talking 10 grand, no matter what you're looking at.
Roughly.
Yeah.
The factory is
10 or up.
the factory is trying to implement something called standardized pricing. They have yet to determine what standardized is. So we've had a little bit of an argument this week. Well, he has. He won't let me pick up the phone and call the factory yet.
Because you're more a little bit direct. Huh?
No.
He's the finesse, you're.
Oh, I'm very direct. I'm a bull in a china shop. I've had the privilege of knowing Chris for pushing 20 years now.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can say that I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think.
It's good.
It's not good in the factory buys.
It's not saying.
They do not like it. Because I can tell you exactly what your problem is, and if you don't like it, I don't care.
Right.
I want to make the product better for everybody. But at the end of the day, the installs on these, we think is going to increase some of the valuations. Like some of the else.
Well, that's where I was headed with it. I mean, that was ultimately the question I had for you and for these guys, or how are you gonna add that into the calculation?
I don't know if you
Well, that
can.
boat that you saw yesterday had that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Which boat?
That was that custom.
Ocean Master?
The ocean crab.
Ocean
Right.
Craft yesterday, the one they built.
Yeah, so I can tell you that the factory knows about the pebbles in the ride system because of that boat. They ran it up.
Because they beach it.
They beach it.
Yeah.
And there's a stone that gets jammed up in those wedge packs. And then, won't function, we get it alarms. And that's a known problem that nobody has great fix for, because like tolerances.
Don't do that. Wait, but the boat's designed that you embark and disembark off the bow of the boat and still run with gas.
Can't really do it because you're impeding water flow and you're adding resistance into the electrical motors to increase its.
On the outside, it's just like maybe like duct tape, I don't know.
There's really no tolerance.
Like seal,
Yeah. there's very little tolerance to put anything.
It's less than,
Even just, no flexible material, could, it would, it'd be.
well,
Come
flexible,
up and feel this later.
flexible
Well, maybe
material.
it's something they could look for, well, it's something they're probably doing research about.
I can't answer what they're doing.
To create
Don't be.
bigger gap or.
Yeah, right now.
I'm sure those guys are giving them some good feedback
So
with
for
that.
value. Once it becomes stock from the factory, you don't have to factor that in because every model.
Well,
that year is
how,
gonna
how
have-
close to comp can you get, right?
Well, hopefully, if you're getting them for the same year, then you're set. It's when you're looking at one that's been added aftermarket for that and it's not stock, that's when you need to be going, okay, 10 grand,
So here,
5 grand, 20 grand.
look, I'm not a surveyor.
A lot of electronics.
Right. I don't
We
think-
appraised the vessel as part of our survey, so we had to know what these things cost.
What we would say is the same thing with electronics, like how do you add valuation to something that upgrades the electronics?
Yeah, there's typically very little, but for this changes the ride of the boat. I mean, this is a little different than adding radar or FLIR or.
What is it?
In terms of
Well,
the performance of the boat,
I've
the
had,
safety of the vessel.
I've been on boats, like you said, they roll a lot at sea. And I know 2 boats exactly in Ocean City that I've done that on. And the sail was lost because it rolled too much. He was not, the customers were not comfortable with that roll.
So
This would have resolved that.
right, this would have, about a Humphrey system, how would you upgrade for the Humphrey system? How would you add that in terms of your evaluation? Zip system. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think you can add valuation to it. And what it's gonna do is add the market price or the boat's gonna stay on the market last.
It's gonna sell quicker.
Right.
Because it's got more bells and whistles.
Right.
If you add a Seakeeper on a boat, onto a boat, does it increase the valuation of the vessel?
That's the question.
Well, yeah,
When it's,
But
when it's brand
you
new.
guys are the experts in that. field. That
If
makes
it's
it more
an add-
desirable.
If it's an add-on, yeah.
But then, or even a Seakeeper ready boat that doesn't have this gyro in it, but it's all ready for it.
So just, speaking of the interceptor type, like Humphreys, what do you say are the big different, characteristics, the pros and cons of this type versus the interceptor type
Reaction to.
reaction speed? These are functioning kind of like trim tabs, where
They
they're
are
going.
functioning as trim tabs.
Yeah.
They're creating a low pressure center, right?
Yeah.
They're creating a low pressure center identical to a trim tab, right? All trim tabs doing is creating a low pressure center and forcing the opposite side of the
Yeah.
vessel up, right? It's simple hydrodynamics. All we're doing with rod, that low pressure center is here. It's implementing that low pressure center down to here, and it's creating lift on this side, forcing the other side down.
Yeah.
It's all you're doing. It's identical to a trim tab.
Yeah.
Identical to a Humphreys, it's a little quicker. The difference is the speed of reaction. Right? Because Humphreys, and nothing against them, they make a wonderful product, they truly do. They can't physically move as fast because that blade has a motor with a gear-driven system, and it takes time to move that gear up and down. There's a delay in the gear. There's a delay from the sensor to the motor. There's a reduction gear in there. That's how it works, right? You've now on Ride got a direct drive system. The motor's there. That's the bolt that ties the arm to the bucket, to the motor. It's direct drive. It can't react faster. There's no mechanical loss. There's no mechanical delay. So your speed of reaction is much more instantaneous. Now, you add into that, the IMU is reading 1,000 times a second, the system's moving 100 times a second. Human reaction is 4/10 of a second in a lot of actions, especially as older. Right, he's a little quicker than I am, maybe not.
Not right now.
But seriously, you can't physically react as fast as this can read. The IMU is reading the wave conditions and responding to the motors before you can physically feel it. That's your difference.
How much does the motor move?
Currently, they can move and deploy up to 1 inch. Physically,
How much rotation?
It's,
that's it.
yeah, Just that inch.
That's all can move. We set it to 0 when we're doing the setups on them. There's a whole configuration process. We have to go to physical 0. We put a straight edge on it and we literally move it to here and set this actuator, plug it in. Then we set the opposite side actuator to 0. It moves all the way up and moves all the way down and tells us where it wants to be. So it's sensing its own. That new software is awesome. Okay, so it's working.
I'm assuming that beside the active trim or active adjustment in C, you can also induce a list one side or the other if needed.
You absolutely can. Yeah. I can't show you that when this is in demo mode, but on boats, yeah, you can. It's on.
You can run it in manual mode just like you can any normal trim tab system if you wanted to.
But what is it? The list is also still working actively.
Yeah, exactly. So you can induce bias into it. So if you see on our display,
Right, so if I've got a heavy load to port, I can have port.
Or would it sense it?
If you've got wind on
Right.
port side, or you want to induce a little more list in
Right.
port side, you
More
can
balance.
force it.
Yeah, we had 3 people on one side of the boat and all 3 of us jumped to the other side of the boat as quick as we could and it reacted that fast.
Yeah, I walk around the boat and the boat doesn't move.
When you take a 32-foot, 9.5-foot beam center console and move 350 pounds from one side to another, as quick as you can move. I don't care what boat you're on, it's gonna list pretty quick. With this, the reaction time is so fast, it doesn't move.
It's great. Is there a, you power down, you're done, do they go to a default position?
They go back to 0.
Back to 0.
And that's why we have to set it to 0. So that one is not done. But we'll fix that.
What's the amperage draw when it's working hard?
I haven't put a click meter on it yet. It's got a breaker at 25 amps. And that's at 24 and 12. Only 24 applications we've seen thus far. We've done. Peak don't know yet. So we'll be able to tell you in about 2 weeks. So, very few.
So it won't be a pounding post?
Because you can't keep it from ballast here.
That's it, right? So, back in the early 90s, they called it the out of post experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because the ass end of the boat would slide around.
Nasty.
The whole goal with this is sort of experience you that. This particular boat, at some point in time, somebody had installed spray rails onto them, right? A third of the way back on the hull. Well, that might be the problem. I looked at it and I don't get that's the problem, but I'm more than happy to cut it off for you. We cut it off, blasted in, did all that, and called me and was like, oh, you're right. Didn't do anything.
Yeah, a lot of people put those on to say that we did.
Yeah, and it wasn't, was it? No, it's a hull design issue.
It's a flat 3 degrees of dead rise doesn't help.
A flat transom with a 49-degree entry doesn't work real well. We're thinking this might work. We don't know.
Yeah, John Patrick hasn't had one sold and he has the post. Mold.
Instead of mold, but I don't think he's tried to solve it. So we'll see. We know that they are working on boats up to about 50 feet right now. They're working on coming out with it. I would suspect within the next 2 years we're going to see. I don't know for sure. In the factory, I'm telling you, even my friends at R&D are like, we can't buy it. So we used to get all that info, we can't right now. They do not let us.
With a lot of these sportfish, they add with their large trim tabs, they're using tab to get on a plane and then pulling it back as they're getting up to full speed. How effective is this while it's now partially deployed trimming the vessel?
Awesome. Because when we can add in the software program, there's a trim command control curve. Say that 3 times fast, right? That we can add that bias, we can add it in 5 mile an hour increments. They don't use knots. Why? I have no freaking clue. Don't know, can't explain it. But we can add that bias in for full deployment. But even at full deployment, they're only saying, deploy 1 inch.
they still have a 4-inch deformity. But as you're coming up on plane, it's not the inherent instability issues, it's once you're up on plane that it stops. That semi-displacement mode, boats usually not all over the place. I can't say all are, yeah, I can't say all are that way. We've all been on that boat when you go, whoa, get me off this thing. But sometimes you can't do anything about that, but overall.
Have you seen braided fishing line get wrapped around it yet? With that done?
Yep.
How'd that go?
Yep. Keep on bucket off.
That's it, okay. Those 4 bolts. Pulled out, put it back on.
You have to recalibrate a bunch after, no? Oh, because it's the gear system, the actuator system, you set the notch, the zeroing and.
Put it at 0, unbolted, bolt it right back in.
Oh,
It's automatically reset.
I see.
So if you haven't moved anything too much, it won't affect it too much. But it also, inside the motor has its own sensors, right? To tell it when it's at 0.
Where it is.
If you move it, it's gonna tell you, so. Yeah.
So this is.
If I physically move this, you can see right here on the scale.
So you will always have that display showing what it's doing?
You can have this, it's tied into your MFD.
Right on.
One way or another.
Yeah.
So you will always have some version, not this is for Raymond dealers, so gotta get it way around.
It's got to support HTML.
Right, what's that?
The application is HTML, so it's got to be an MFD that can support like a Garmin One Helm or something like that. Or,
Yeah. It has to have that radar Emacs, environmental tone, I forget all this in that stuff. Mostly for stuff. There is a full MFD compatibility chart. I can't find it for all.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, one will not work with the Garmin 7600.
the One Helm is not there.
One helm's not there.
Is there any in the menu in the display? Is there any thing where we can see like sea hours or run hours like I could with the Seakeeper to be able to record that? What is the maintenance schedules that's on there?
So there is no maintenance schedule.
No, except for this.
Just the Seakeeper.
So there is no maintenance schedule other than anodes. And right here on the menu, you can see it. You don't, in all fairness stuff, nobody cares. So
It's not no bearings or anything to wear on this.
there's not in the warranty on the units, 2 years parts.
The more I hear-
Not cover labor. No, you want to call and complain to the factory, I will be more than happy to give you the number.
Maybe call little John.
Yeah.
They ignore me.
The more I learn
This is
about
little John, not Big John. This is.
Oh, they go, oh, thank God. What's your problem?
it does feel like trim tab replacement.
It is.
And that affects my thinking of valuation of the boat too.
It can.
But not to go back down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah, and so the sportsman that we utilize, right, it was a
21.
32 2023 model, 2024 it became 2024 model, and 2025 it became standard. I would consider those two boats, that boat, the valuation of 2020. Because of that. So, if you want to do that, or if you want to add $5,000, $10,000, that's completely up to you guys. I can't tell you that, but all I can tell you is boat will not sit on the market very long.
We're putting these more and more.
For a ride, they're not.
That's true. Wow. We have 5 boats in the yard right now that we're doing right. 5. We've done 6 this year.
Yeah.
It'd be 11 boats so far. And we're into the early part of the second quarter in 2025. That's not the I have one tech whose entire job right now is nothing but ride. That's it. Well,
So in an aftermarket installation, you're removing the trim tabs, reforming the hull,
if we have to. We're trying not.
or do you just lock them?
We're trying not to do the glass work on the hull, if we can prevent it.
Meaning you outsource it or you just work around it?
No,
As long as you fill in the holes.
Yeah,
You know.
we can fill the pockets in a whole different format. The answer is yes, as long as we have a flat transom, we can install it. If we have to make the flat transom, great. We can do that in-house, not everybody can.
Right.
But a lot of the boats, a fair number of boats do have just a flat standard transom. Parkers, or Cutwater we're doing right now, I've got Sea Hunt, Cape Horn will not work without modifications.
Scouts won't work.
Some
Some
of
scouts
some of the
won't work.
scouts will not work. You can't physically add it to the seas.
Some of the
Because their
Steigers.
flotation bracket, they build the trim tab actuator into the flotation bracket, and there's not enough vertical height underneath of their flotation bracket to allow it to work. So it's 4.5 inches tall. And on a lot of the scouts, it's only 2.5 before the flotation bracket.
You can't install that at all on those.
Can.
With the modification.
Depends on how big of a check you want, right?
Yeah.
But your scout
What are you
findings
talking
are
about?
probably online.
Well,
He took his boat back.
$30,000 modification to this flotation bracket. It's now no longer fiscally feasible to do that. And, you know, on a surveyor side is, or on a customer side, is the ROI worth that index?
And we've seen a lot of them doing ride or even gyro. People are wanting to step up to the bigger boats, but are doing this instead. Because they're getting a better ride out of it. So it's really, you start going into the install and now we're adding 5 or 6 grand. It's okay. Above what we've already quoted them at 10. Okay, well, where am I gonna put that money? In a new boat or into doing the modifications on an older one?
Yeah.
Craig, you can install it on your boat over there.
I'm sorry.
I
You
know
can
I
install it
promised,
on your boat over there.
I promise.
yeah, about noon.
You would know.
Don't worry, that's cool. Good. Keep going.
Get a picture of it.
We're here to answer some of the questions for you. I think there's just my contact at the end of that. I got it. There. If you need me, this is how to get me.
Yeah.
For those guys who are online, can you just read that out? We can't see the screen very well.
It's J Norton at AnnapolisHarbor.net. And our phone number is 410-268-0092.
Thanks, little John.
I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys need me. I think a number of you have my number. But reach out.
Some of us are losing.
Oh.
I do have a stack of cards if you want to take some of mine.
Go 2 ways.
So, John, do you know, is this stuff going into Europe as well now in the UK?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's a limited market in the UK area, from what I understand. A little slower adoption rate, a little more conservative individuals.
Yes.
But we will, I'm sure you'll see it.
Yeah.
And more of the OEMs have the units now, so it'll be everywhere. Seakeeper does have training centers in the US and in Italy. So RIDE is not yet implemented in terms of installation or formalized training hands-on. They're only currently doing online training. Different ballgame. Their goal originally was to do this as a DIY. We don't recognize it. I won't call it for DIY because then we're responsible for them as a dealer. So forget it.
Where's a, can we check with you to see if there's a boat show that has a demo boat to try it out?
You're gonna have a boat at Bay Bridge.
I will have for gyro. I won't have our rides over there. Riverside Marine, who we partner with, has all of their sportsmen across the entire line has ride on them.
We have a very good working relationship with Riverside. So if I walk up and say, hey, I need to steal this boat for an hour, they'll go, okay. So if you do come to the Bay Bridge show, I'll be there on Friday. with my Seakeeper ride rep. John will be joining me for Saturday and Sunday, so if you guys do
I'll
stop
be at
by,
the show, I'm not sure.
if you want to grab me, we can go out and.
I prefer to do
Careful
that.
what you say.
So if a couple of you guys are local and want to be on board.
Well, that's why I was trying to be sensitive to everybody.
No, we appreciate that, yeah. If you want to do that, we can set up a time earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon to do that with just you guys and give a little more.
Paying customers first.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, it's the way it should be.
This wasn't free to build. Yeah, we built this in-house, so this is all us and resident fusion, true carbon, clear coating, blah, blah, blah. This is all us. And we hold this in and out. This is our crew.
And it stayed well together, even though it flipped over in the trailer.
You said, who's gonna hire to fix it?
Yeah, it broke it.
This one, I know when you were at the promoting show, stop by.
Yeah.
You had a good turnout there. A lot of people were interested. A lot of, you're right there at the front door.
Timonium was one of our better shows in general.
Yeah, I mean, since we moved it from downtown Baltimore out there,
Best thing,
for Christ, yeah.
I hated going into town.
Oh, yeah,
Everybody get involved going in that truck.
yeah. And we want to make it bigger.
And I'm all in favor of it. I mean, that's a great show for us and it's a target market.
Yeah.
The center console boats from 21 to 30 feet. That's the market for this. That's the market that makes sense.
It does.
It's a 90-day and it's a 90-day difference on the boat.
Yeah.
If you have not felt it, I recommend you come out. You know, I don't know where you're up next week, but come on out. It is awesome. Experience. Yes, little down on Friday, we set up 5. You guys going?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.